Hey everyone, my name is the Theme Park Evangelist. It is Sunday, April 14th, and it has been officially one day ever since I officially left the ministry, Answers in Genesis, and that was honestly one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. I mean, why on earth would I move to northern Kentucky to work for Answers in Genesis just to turn around and leave and go work for a company that's nationwide, basically? And no, I don't mean the company nationwide, which is always on your side either. I mean Chick-fil-A. Yes, for those of you who do not know, I am going to be working for an American favorite called Chick-fil-A, home of the original chicken sandwich, if you did not know. And also the famous saying, my pleasure. So you're going to start hearing that from me quite a bit. Not to mention, um, Chick fil A is well known for some of the highest customer service in the entire country, as cool as that is. So, yeah, that ought to be really interesting. But, you know, at the same time, why would I, move here? It just comes all the way back to why would I move to Northern Kentucky just to leave and go work for a company that I could go work for in Florida? It's like, at this point, why am I staying here in Northern Kentucky? And the topic of today's YouTube video is going to be that, but the title of today's YouTube video is called Why Did I Leave Answers in Genesis to Work for Chick-fil-A? And that's pretty much it. And I'm getting more into that with my main question, which is, why would I move up here to, do all that? And but the real question is, why am I staying here in Northern Kentucky and not moving back to Florida to go work for Chick-fil-A and live rent free with TJ? Well, there are a lot of good reasons, and I'll tell you right now, I'm not just working for Chick-fil-A. So, before I go any further, first, let's sit down and go over what compelled me to make this decision in the first place. So, last year, before Katie and I got engaged, that is, I was just working, with part-time with benefits at the Creation Museum. They decided to make me go from seasonal to part-time. It was a huge thing for me. I was like, this is exciting. I'm actually moving up. It took me 2 years, but, nonetheless, I was very excited about that. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And, this was my very first official full year with the Creation Museum. So last winter, for example, I cleaned the 4D theater and the planetarium the entire winter, and I thought that was like the neatest thing. And I came back, and they went over certain things with me that I didn't know before. Well, actually, I take that back. So I basically worked the entire year, and I even got to learn a new position later that fall called the Guest Services Information Center / counter, or GSIC for short. And I thought that was like so cool. Sorry, that I got to learn all that. Now, at the time, I was under the impression that I was going to be working a little bit more. Well, things didn't work out that way. But anyway, so nonetheless, when I first started with the Creation Museum, there was another young girl that was with me at the time, and she used to work the Guest Services Information Center a lot. And all I really knew was the 4D theater. And to be honest, when I first started with the Creation Museum and Guest Services, I could understand a lot why they would stick me in the 4D theater a lot. That's all I really knew. Sometimes they would stick me in the planetarium. But unfortunately, the managers started making decisions that were questionable, if that makes any sense. So, without saying too many bad things about the ministry, because, deep down inside, I love them. And I love my former managers, but at the same time, they were still making some questionable decisions that were making me go, huh? That kind of thing. So, as time went on, I started noticing that they, even after I learned GSIC, they were still not really giving me that position. And I got a lot of excuses why I wasn't able to work it. They were sticking their favorite people in that position. I felt like that was a lot of favoritism. And they kept sticking me in the 4D theater. And the primary reason why they kept doing that was because, as they claimed, I'm a young person and young people need to be in there because it's too hard on the older people. But truthfully, the older people are just as capable of doing the 4D theater as a younger person. I get it. I was one of the minority, but it's not like I don't have my whole life ahead of me, and it's not like I can't just walk up to them and say, I'm moving on, and anytime I want. And as I kept pointing out to them over and over again, I wanted to go full time. I wanted to go into management. I really wanted to excel. I wanted to, get engaged to this woman. We were, thinking about marriage at the time, but it was still way off in the future. So originally, Katie and I were talking about going out to a place called Holden Beach, North Carolina, to go and get engaged. And there was this whole plan for me to propose to her right there on the beach, right in front of her entire extended family, without saying anything. Let's just say there were some family issues that were going on that forced us to redo everything. It was kind of disappointing, to be honest. And Katie, me, and her parents, my in-laws, basically came up with this idea. Okay, well, what else can we do to ensure that David can still propose to Katie? And we came up with this idea of traveling out to Western North Carolina, which they still are interested in having the wedding out there if we're still interested. Because it's a beautiful area. Don't get me wrong, that's where I proposed to her at. So they had us meet them in an area called Little Switzerland, which is where the cabin we stayed at, and that where I proposed to Katie at. And for those of you who do not know me, by the way, and I took Katie in her car, and we drove all the way out there. We went all the way up to the top of the mountain, which was about 3,000 feet above sea level. And the original plan for us was to propose for us to get engaged on. That's what I meant to say, on Black Friday. Unfortunately, things did not work out the way we expected. We ended up deciding, after all, to have our Thanksgiving Day on Thanksgiving Day. Like, well, isn't that kind of what the purpose of Thanksgiving Day is? I mean, truthfully, there really isn't a whole lot opening on Thanksgiving Day. I mean, which you would think that, but anyway, so nonetheless, while we were at the cabin, I made this whole plan. I was going to propose to her right there in the back patio, and because Katie and I both have learning disabilities, and Katie has an anxiety disorder, I decided to go ahead and tell her in advance, this is where I'm going to do it at, this is when I'm going to do it. And we had her parents right there, so Katie and I got all dressed up, and I had everything planned out. Originally I was going to have Katie facing the other way, and they came up with the idea, have Katie facing you, but have her back towards the mountains. And the pictures turned out beautiful. You can actually see the entire proposal on my YouTube channel. It was back on November 23rd of last year, so November 23rd, 2023. Almost a golden engagement day. I thought that was just like the coolest thing. I had actually predicted over a year in advance that was going to be our engagement day, and I was dead on. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. We hadn't even talked about it, but based off of what Katie and I were, when Katie and I were originally wanting to get engaged, and we had mentioned Thanksgiving Day weekend, that was the day I had picked out. And sounds like everything worked out, didn't it? So, of course, after that, as expected, we were like, well, we gotta, start saving up for a wedding. And, of course, by this point, now my parents and Katie's parents are chopping at the bit. You guys gotta get full-time jobs with benefits. And Katie's parents basically came to me, and not just in person, but on the phone, and they said, look, David, if you're going to marry our daughter, Katie, of course, then you've got to have full-time benefits, no exceptions. This whole working for Answers and Genesis part-time benefits isn't going to cut it anymore. The only benefit I ever really had, aside from the freebies to all those attractions down in Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg, which are immediately terminated as of yesterday, by the way. So for those of you who are expecting me to show you around Dollywood for free and Titanic Museum and Ripley's Aquarium, newsflash for you guys, your last chance to see that was last Thanksgiving weekend. Unfortunately, the only way you'll ever see those places again is if Katie and I save up enough money and we make the trip out there. And we don't just pay for... I mean, obviously, we could do stuff like find alternatives to save money on parking, but now I have to dish out over $100 just to get us to Dollywood. And on top of that, even the Titanic Museum, you're looking at still another $100, as crazy as it is, just for two people. And I've never had to pay for the Titanic Museum in almost 2 years that I've gone there. Almost 2 years I've been going to that place, but no mo. I had this whole plan to take TJ down there, and guess what? I will have to tell him, you're on your own now. I probably will still meet him, but only if I can afford it. And I don't even know if I can go now, because to tell you the truth, with Katie and I wanting to get married August of 2025, I don't know how many more trips I can afford to take. And now that I can't exactly get into Pigeon Forge or Gatlinburg for free into those places, it really is not worth it. Beyond the Lens, I'm glad I went the one time I did, because I can't do that for free anymore. Wonderworks, glad I went the one time for free when I did, because can't do that anymore. Anyway, you get the point. So, I enjoy those things that I could, but the only other benefit that they gave me aside from those things, and those are for all Answers and Genesis employees, by the way, was the fact that I could get medical, and that also came with a health savings account. And Answers and Genesis was willing to pay me $25 every 2 weeks. And they would basically just put the money into my health savings account, my HSA, a little bit at a time, and that's as much as I got out of them. And that was about it. And I would use that health savings account every single time I went to Meyer, or if I had to pay for any doctor's appointments. So I go to St. Elizabeth's Physicians up here. I no longer go to the same doctor I used to go to see in Kissimmee. And every time I go on my chart, which is an app that they use, by the way, I would go ahead and log on, and I paid my medical bill. And I would even set it up for monthly installments, and I just pay a little bit at a time. I haven't even had to pay out of my own pocket for any medical expenses except for my eye doctor appointment, but that's besides the point. Since October of 2023, if this is anything. That was 6 months ago. And the eye doctor appointment, even then, Answers and Genesis paid the majority of it, and then I just paid what was left. And I could have probably paid a little bit more if I had wanted to take the risk of paying a little bit more, but they were getting a little snobby with me, like, it was already taking long enough. Like, we don't want to waste any more time just for it to decline. Because even though there was nobody in line, their card readers are so slow, and then they blame it on me. And I'm like, how is that my fault? But, you know what? Whatever. It is what it is. and they were kind of upset with me when I told them I want to do a partial card payment. They were like, we just want you to pay the entire thing all at once, get out of our faces. And I'm just like, wow, well, that's just rude. But whatever. And that's why I only go to the eye doctor once a year. Just for that very reason. And on top of that, every time the eye doctor sees me, he says my eyes only get slightly worse. Only slightly. So I cannot exactly complain. So anyway, I came to a very difficult decision because of what my in-laws said. And right at the beginning of the year, I started looking around for full-time jobs with Financiers and Genesis. I didn't want to leave guest services, but I knew I had to. So I started applying for different full-time positions at the Ark. I started looking around throughout the Creation Museum. I started looking early, and I started going hard. I was like, I need something full-time. I need it right now. And that was pretty much all there was to it. And I kept getting no, and no, and no, and no. And I was like, well, shoot, this sucks. And I was like, well, God, I don't want to do this, but I may just have to look outside of Answers in Genesis. Now, obviously, you guys know I got Chick-fil-A, but was Chick-fil-A my first thought? Ironically, I went on Indeed, and I started looking around, and one of the first things that came up was a retail position at Cracker Barrel in Florence, Kentucky. And I was like, well, it's not really my thing, but I'll give it a try. So I drove over there, and it was ironically full-time too. So when I did have the interview, that is, I drove over there after work one day, and the manager came out, and he goes, oh, I'm not the hiring manager. The hiring manager doesn't come until tomorrow. We need you to come back in between such and such time and such time. Well, darn, I'm working at that time. And then he goes, well, darn it, but that's when we need you. So they basically assumed right there in their minds that because I wasn't willing to give in to their demands, they decided to write me off right away. Even though I reapplied, the very next week, they already had written me off in their minds. Just goes to show that I wasn't even worth their time, or let alone them worth my time. So I was like, you know what, whatever. I tried reapplying to Meyer. I even tried another location because I'm kind of done with the Florence location. No offense. Not that I don't love them as a store, as a customer. Excuse me. I don't like them as an employee anymore. Forget what I said about loving them as a store. I meant to say loving them as a customer. And then I tried to reapply to the movie theater, and ironically, I did actually get an interview with the hiring manager. It was really nice. She had already pretty much decided she wanted to hire me, but she wanted to get through the rest of her interviews, and she wanted to give it a week. But what she was not counting on was the fact that I already had 2 phone interviews in 2 days, and I wasn't going to tell her because then she would have been like, oh, this was a waste of our time, bye, and there would have gone that opportunity. And I'm smarter than that. So that's why I kept my mouth shut the entire time about that. I just made it sound like I was only interested in her and that was final. And that's how it should be. So I basically made it, sound like that, I was just really interested in that job because if for whatever reason the 2 interviews I had on Monday didn't work out, at least I always had the movie theater as a backup. And that's exactly how my prayers were being centered to God, and that's also what I was planning in my head at the time too. So I had also applied to Chick-fil-A. Ironically, when I first started applying to Chick-fil-A, the 2 Chick-fil-A's that came to my mind right off the bat were CVG Airport, which is my local airport, Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport, and the Chick-fil-A on Mall Road. And the reason why I particularly chose those 2, so CVG Airport location, because my good friend Jeremy works there, and he's been asking me for over a year now to come and work for him. And I say work for him because he's an assistant manager. at that location. He's not the assistant manager, he's just an assistant manager. And I also thought about the Mall Road location, so over by the Florence Mall, because of the fact that I personally love that particular Chick-fil-A as a customer. Yes, it is a little further away, but I also really enjoy going over there just to work. I mean, not work, sorry, to eat at. And I've personally just never had a bad experience. Normally, I do eat at the Chick-fil-A on Houston Road, which is directly in front of the Meijer I used to work at, only for the convenience. I do have the odd, occasional good experience at that Chick-fil-A. I know of the manager, but I will tell you guys wholeheartedly, not the Chick-fil-A I wanted to work for. I've heard a lot of shady things about that particular Chick-fil-A, and that's why I chose not to work there. But I applied anyway because I needed a full-time job and I needed to get out of Answers in Genesis, unfortunately, because they were basically refusing to give me full-time. Their number one excuse was money. Answers in Genesis has money. Just make sure you keep that in mind. It's giving more staff full-time is going to hurt them financially, because that's more money that they have to put towards full-time staff and less money that they can put towards their office staff. Their priority, and then their other biggest priority is making sure that they can keep expanding the Ark and the museum for their guests, which to me makes sense because that's how their money is coming in. And also it gives the guests something else to do. Like right now, the Creation Museum is getting ready to bring in a brand new exhibit. I'm not going to tell you guys what it is because that's up to Answers in Genesis to tell you guys, not me. I no longer work for them, so honestly, I barely know anything about it other than the topic behind it, and you're not going to get out of me. So, anyway, what really hurt me also was the fact that when I told them that I got the full-time job, it was so okay with them because that was less money that they had to worry about dishing out on me that a bigger company, in their opinion, had. And I feel like that's kind of selfish on their part, but that's me. It's here or there. My time with them is done. And Lord willing, I can come back again in the future. So at least I can now say that I've been forced to keep that buried inside because, heaven forbid I get terminated for it. But they can no longer do that, as I have already officially left. I just got to have Katie bring in my uniform shirt and my uniform pants. My last pair, which I cleaned for them, just to be nice. And I already got the sheet filled out, and all Katie has to do is drop those two things off with the sheet, and I'm done. I've already turned in everything else. They just got to take me out of their system as of tomorrow. So, yeah. Anyway, as far as how did I get this job, so to make a long story short, I had two phone interviews with Chick-fil-A on that Monday. The first one was supposed to be at 9:45 in the morning with CVG Airport, Chick-fil-A, and the second one was supposed to be at the Houston Road location. So the airport ended up being a little late, and I thought that was hilarious, and in some ways I'm kind of glad too, and that was definitely a God thing. And the Houston Road location called me, and they said that they wanted some time to think about it over. They called me back later that afternoon just to tell me that they wanted to move me on an in-person interview, but they were too late. And here's why. When CVG Airport called me, I spoke to the manager, and she mentioned that her assistant manager, Jeremy, recommended me to her, and I told her why I wanted to work for Chick-fil-A at that particular location. I was very honest with her. I told her that I thought it would be so neat to work at an airport. And I love the airport. I really do. I love going to my particular airport a lot. I I love the atmosphere of the airport. Do I necessarily look forward to getting there early? No. But I still love the airport. I really do. It's one of my favorite places ever. And yes, there is a cat next to me. So, um, anyway, at the end of the phone call, she says, "So I am interested in hiring you." She told me my starting pay, which let's just say is more than I'm making right now, even more than I was going to be making after my pay raise from Answers and Justice if I had stayed. And, which, keep in mind, I left voluntarily. I did not get forced out. Keep that, do not think that they forced me out by any means, because they did not. Katie, on the other hand, got forced out, but I cannot say why. But I chose voluntarily to leave. And that's a good thing. Every single job I have ever worked at, I have always given my 2 weeks notice. I've always worked the entire 2 weeks. The only job that I did leave on bad terms from was Meyer, and that was my second time go around. Yes, I did give my 2 weeks notice, but I only stayed there about a month too, altogether, month and a half. And they said that wasn't long enough for them to be impressed with me. And it was because they were harassing me. And I had enough. I gave my 2 weeks notice. I worked my full 2 weeks, and then I was done. And now they refuse to hire me back because of that. So, whatever. Teach his own. So, this whole process of becoming a Chick-fil-A employee at the airport has been a lot harder than I anticipated it being. But at the same time, I've been told it's going to be so rewarding too. Because not only am I going to be working for Chick-fil-A, I'm going to be working for a family-owned company called United Concessions Group, and I'm working for CVG Airport. Actually, starting tomorrow morning, I'm going to be going down to their badging office here in Burlington, which technically where I'm living right now is a suburb of Burlington and Florence. And I'm going to go and turn in 2 pages of paperwork that I did late last night. And then I'm going to get my fingerprints done. I haven't done my fingerprints in 7 years since I worked for Walt Disney World. And then I'm going to get my picture taken for my airport badge. Once I receive my airport badge, not only will I get placed on the training schedule, I will be an official CVG employee. Like, how cool is that? Just to think that I am not just going to be an employee of Chick-fil-A, but an employee of an airport. I cannot get over that. I never would have thought I would ever be working for an airport. And then just to complicate things, so I found out how I'm going to be getting to work. So apparently, when I was at the airport last, and I showed you, well, not really showed you guys, but I told you guys that I would have to enter in through the door that's marked badged employees only. There was more to it than that. Obviously, I still have to go through the TSA every single day, but also, apparently, I have to park all the way in their value parking lot in a small section called for employees only, excuse me. Then I have to hop on an employee shuttle, not just a regular shuttle, an employee shuttle to take me all the way to the terminal, and I get off there. And then once I get through the TSA, I still have to walk or take the subway all the way down to Terminal B, go up the escalator, and then enter the employee door into the Chick-fil-A, and I'm officially at work. That seems like a lot of work just to get to work. But I'll tell you right now, after all the walking I have to do, that's about 30 minutes of exercise a day I will be doing. And that's all fast walking. Because I walk fast, I don't just go. I've seen some teenagers that walk so slow that it will take them over an hour just to get anywhere at the pace they're going. And I'm just like, how on earth are you going so slow? But whatever. Sorry, I'm shaking my laptop a lot. So, to finally answer that question, why did I choose to leave for Answers in Genesis? I kind of been already answering it just to work for Chick-fil-A. Well, I actually did speak to the manager because I got confused at first because I was checking my. Um, I don't really 100% know what DOL status stands for, but supposedly it has to stand for something regarding whether you're part time or you're full time. And it said I was part time, and I was like, huh? So after pulling some strings, I managed to get their phone number. And the phone number that's listed in Google for that airport is not valid at all. I'm trying to change it, but Google is fighting with me teeth and nail for it or about it, which is so stupid because I know it's not accurate. And I spoke to the manager, and the manager basically told me that the first 90 days are a probation period. Makes sense. Make sure I'm not some joker or not, like most teenagers that come into Chick-fil-A to work for them seem to be. And trust me, I used to be a teenager myself. I get it. And then after that, they will make the decision from there whether they want to go ahead and grant me full time. They said 9 times out of 10, they go ahead and grant you the full time because they need full time. They told me they need full time. Jeremy told me they need full time. And they need people who are willing to commit. It's not easy to become a CVG employee. There is so much involved. I mean, tomorrow is just the beginning. After that, I have to go back there with the rest of my paperwork, and I have to turn that in. Then I have to do a 30 to 40-minute session, and then I'm supposed to go get an SIDA badge, which I'm not going to go over what that means, but let's just say it's another important one. And then I have to get trained on that. And then when I do go over there for training, there's so much more involved. It's not just how to be a Chick-fil-A employee, there's also training on working at an airport, for crying out loud, because this ain't just some Chick-fil-A that you find off of the side of the road or off the interstate. No, this is a Chick-fil-A inside of an airport. Huge difference. And then on top of that, I'm working for United Concessions Group, and their number one priority is top of the line customer service. You think Chick-fil-A has high customer service? Apparently, United Concessions Group multiplies that by 100, and I'm just like, ugh. And I already struggle as it is at work, always giving that 100%. Because sometimes I come into work, and I'm just like, I'm just not feeling it right now. And with Answers in Genesis just being the way they have been lately, it's been draining me, and I've only been giving 50%, and United Concessions Group wants 100,000%, and Chick-fil-A wants 100% no matter what. So this ought to be interesting. Just be praying for me, praying for Katie, especially with her needing to get a full-time job with benefits. Gosh, I love her professional photographer job, but I really just want her to cut down to doing that one day a week as a hobby, and then doing a full-time job with benefits the rest of the week. I can't say anything about my brother, but be praying for him. My brother's just discouraged right now. He's got a lot going on in his life, but he does have some good news today. He is doing something that he hasn't done in a couple of years, so I think that's a good thing for him. Well, my parents are on their way back home. They have been out traveling for the past few days, but the good news is they will be home here shortly. I've actually been doing laundry for them. Was forced to, I'm not going to get into it, and honestly, they had every right to kind of force this upon me. And I promise you, my parents are not being jerks. I did something over the weekend I shouldn't have done, and you know how it is. Me being here, and just not having Katie constantly around to watch me, let alone not having my brother around till last night, for example, to keep me under control. So, yeah, not gonna say much, but I'm gonna go make it up to them by finishing up their laundry, and I'm going to go finish my own laundry for that matter. But I have really good news for you. So, not only tomorrow am I going to go start on this whole airport badge application process, which, of course, I did all the paperwork last night, like I said. Katie is off tomorrow, so she's going to go with me. But we have a surprise for you guys tomorrow. But I'm just going to go ahead and kind of give you an idea of what there is to expect, because I don't even really know what there is to expect. Katie is going to take me, and I'm going to take you guys with me to Newport, Kentucky, which is over by the Newport Aquarium. And we're going to go try out a brand new fried chicken restaurant that is supposedly 100% gluten-free. Katie, as you know, or as you guys should know if you don't already, Katie is gluten-free, has been for about 8 years. So we're going to go try this place out. Also, if you are not already on my Facebook page, facebook.com/thethemeparkevangelist, I will also be posting the announcement on my Facebook page as well, to be watching out for that video tomorrow evening, tomorrow night. So, always remember, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Have a great day. Peace out. See you tomorrow afternoon in Newport, Kentucky.